Hey, everybody. You know what time it
Hey,
is. It's another episode of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Kaiser. And hey, we have a guest here live. Well, not live. We're not live, but if you're tuning in any time of the day that you are, could feel live for you. So the special guest here today, he has been making records for 25 years, and then sure, there's more to come. He is based out of the Tampa area and actually is originally from Florida, bounced around a little bit, has come back home because, Florida has a way of doing that to people. But he has a studio, Candor Studio, in Tampa, Florida. This is Mr. Ryan Bush. Ryan, how are you today?
I'm great, man. How you doing?
I am doing
Thank you
wonderful.
for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's great to have you on and really wonderful to get a chance to chat with you, talk about the studio and just shine a light on what you're doing because, you've been at this for a long time. You are no rookie. This has been something you've been doing for a long time, worked on a lot of records and continue to work on a lot of records. So we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, you scared me for a second. I thought we were live at first.
False alarm, false alarm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can rest easy now.
Take a deep breath, relax. We are not live, although long once upon a time in a land far away, I actually did a live podcast before, and doing it live and doing it recorded, two different beasts. So yes, we are
Yeah,
we are definitely recorded. So yeah, man. So you got a new studio that you opened in Tampa, Florida. So we'll talk a lot about that and some of the projects you've been working on, and talk about some of the history and things you've done over your career. Because like we mentioned, 25 years. So it had to start somewhere, right? So you're
yeah,
originally from, I think, Newport Richey. Is that right?
yeah. Born and raised in Newport Richey. My sister and I were the first twins ever born at Community Hospital there.
Oh wow.
Still have the newspaper clipping. Yeah,
Oh,
pretty crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is pretty
Then,
crazy.
yeah, I graduated from Full Sail, the recording school, and right after that, I took off to LA and tried to do the whole LA thing, and was there for a long time.
How did you even get
And
into it?
I never,
How did you even get into that whole, wanting to get into music, radio, whatever the case is? How did you even get into that in the first place?
I started pretty late as music, like getting into music and stuff like that. It was mainly from my big brother. My big brother, he always had the cooler musical influences, and I would steal his influence and stuff like that. And he got me into The Cure, Prince, breakdancing music, and then he was also listening to punk rock stuff. And probably when I was about 13 or 14, he took me to my first show at the Cuban Club, which was Agnostic Front and GBH. And I was just like, oh, this is the coolest thing I've ever been to. I'm hanging with the older guys, and it's punk rock shit that I see on TV. And I didn't understand the music or anything. I just loved being around it. And it was so awesome. It was really, I was hooked then. And then my brother used to hang out with the guys in the Grassy Knoll Gunmen. You remember them?
Yes, I
They were a
do.
90s Tampa band.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother used to hang out with them. And they were kind of like the first live band that I ever saw. I was probably like 13 or 14. And those guys would come over and hang out at the house with my brother. And I was just like enamored by them. I was like, oh, they're musicians. They're so cool. They're playing out everywhere. And from then I was hooked. I went and bought a guitar and tried to teach myself guitar and all that stuff. And wasn't very good at it. So I kind of jumped to the behind the scenes of music to try to be, to try to involve myself with music and be a part of it. And one of the first things I did was I was an intern at 95 YNF back in the day. My buddy, who my brother grew up with, who I ended up becoming really good friends with, he was the host of Radio Clash on 95 YNF, and they would do Sunday nights and they would play, quote unquote alternative music back then. And he was playing Soundgarden, Nirvana, Mudhoney, all the Sub Pop stuff before that stuff even blew up. And he's playing local bands of Tampa and stuff like that. And that really got me like becoming a huge music fan. I was probably about 17 or 18 then, and like just going to that thing on every Sunday night and being an intern and helping him out there. He used to pay me in records and stuff like that. It was awesome. When you're a kid, you're like, oh, I got a stack of CDs from the station. It was awesome. And, that really, really solidified the bug of like wanting to be in the music industry and do something with music. And, I was a very bad guitar player. I had a 4-track and I would always do my own little recordings and stuff like that. And I discovered Full Sail and I just went full charge in it. I really didn't even know what the hell I was doing when I got there. I just knew I wanted to be a part of music and, help craft it and do something with it. And then as I was there for the year and realized, what I signed up for, I really, really dug in on it. And, yeah, that's it, man. It was awesome. I loved it. Loved being at 95 YNF. It was so cool because like back then, nobody on the stations were playing that kind of music. And you had to tune in on Sunday nights to hear anything like cool like that. This was probably 90, I think. 89, 90, maybe 91. Yeah. Yeah, it was super awesome doing that.
Did they have any kind of local show where they focused more on local bands from Tampa and the surrounding area?
They did. And I think that was either Friday nights or Saturday nights after midnight. I think they played more local band stuff. But yeah, I used to tune into that a little bit. I can't even think of a lot of those old bands back in the day. I just remember Grassy Knoll Gunmen because that's who my brother hung out with. And I thought they were so cool. And then they had Scott Burns produce their record, the famous death metal producer from Morrisound and stuff like that. He produced their record. And I always like looked up to them like that was the coolest thing in the world. And like I always wanted to be the guy who went to Morrisound and worked there and stuff. And so I went to Full Sail and started studying recording engineering. Just dug my head in the books and loved it. And then right when I graduated, my brother was moving to LA and he hit me up and was like, "Hey, I'm moving to LA." And it was literally like a 2-day advance notice. He's like, "You want to go?" And I packed my shit up and just jumped in the trailer and just went for it.
Wow.
But I've always dreamed of coming back and being here and opening a studio here and doing that kind of stuff here. Florida's always been home.
So you knew nobody out west. You just moved out there. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Nobody. I mean, this is pre-internet. Like I had to find a job in the recycler. The recycler was like the old want ads kind of paper that went around, and they had a music section, and you could find internship gigs, assistant gigs, all kinds of musical equipment and stuff like that. And like the first week I got there, we got an apartment, and I found an ad for this producer, Jay Lean, who he was like a R&B kind of mixer. He did like the Brand New Heavies, the Far Side and stuff like that. And he was looking for an intern, and I hit him up and he brought me over to he had a little studio in the BMG building right across from Diane Warren. And I was just like enamored. I was like, oh my God, these are like the big songwriters. This is crazy. And literally the first day of being there, I was recording vocals for Patti Labelle. It was insane. It was like moving so fast. Yeah, it was really cool. And then Jay, he was like a traveling mixer engineer guy, and him and I hit it off really good. We became buddies, and he got me a job at Westlake Audio in LA, and that was like my first real like big studio assistant engineer gig. I wasn't even assistant engineer then. I was still a runner at Westlake, and I was running for about 3-4 months, getting food, all that kind of stuff, and cleaning toilets, staying late, and vacuuming the place, doing the grunt work that you have to do.
Right.
And one day Tupac called and wanted to book time. And all the other assistant engineers were like, fuck that. I'm not working with him. That's a nightmare session. They bring a posse of people in and smoking and drinking and partying, and they were all scared to do it. And I was already a Tupac fan. I had Tupacalypse Now record, and I was like, loved rap music and stuff. And I was like, I'll do it. Fuck yeah. And so they threw me on that session from a runner to be an assistant engineer on a Tupac session. And so I'm sitting there my first night. I'm so nervous. Everyone comes in, smoking, hanging out. We're waiting like an hour, getting the vibe, and Tupac comes up to me. He's like, "You ready?" And I'm like, "Yeah, don't you want to wait for your engineer to get here?" And he's like, "You're my engineer." And I was like, oh shit. I had no idea what I was doing. I ran and grabbed the tech. He helped me bring the mic up on the console and get it to tape. And from then on, we just cut 4 songs of rap vocals, man. My first night ever. It was crazy.
How did you know you were doing it the right way?
Nobody was mad at me.
When you say nobody was mad, like who's who? Like the artist, or are there other people that were there besides Tupac and other maybe
It
who
was
else was
Tupac and
present?
like his crew of people.
Hmm.
He had probably like 5 or 6 people, everyone just smoking and drinking. And it was just like a loud party. So no one's really paying attention to like what the engineer's really doing unless you fuck up. You know what I mean? And, you know, I was lucky to be able to patch the MPC, the drum machine, to the tape machine, record the 2 tracks of audio for him to rap to. We did like 4 songs. And then, you know, I think I even used like a C12 on him for rap vocals, which is probably not the vocal mic you want to use. It's very, very like Mariah Carey kind of beautiful, pretty sounding mic. And I didn't know what I was doing, man. I threw up like the nicest mic we had and like made sure it was plugged into tape and just started recording. I think he kind of knew that I didn't know what I was doing and I was nervous as hell. So they were very nice and like, you know, lenient with me and gave me a little leeway to kind of mess up and stuff. But I just sat there and just punched vocals with the tape machine all night. It was awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly. That's kind of how you learn as an engineer, man. You just get thrown in the fire, and if you either sink or swim. And luckily, a studio like Westlake is like maintained perfectly. It's so everything's going to work. So you don't have to really get behind the desk or behind the gear and plug stuff in and like find stuff. When you patch something in, if you know where you're patching it, it's going to work. So you kind of have that confidence of knowing everything in the studio is going to work. And then you also have the tech or down the hall to help you if you really need some help.
Yeah.
But yeah, after that session, I kind of held my own on that session till like 6 a.m. and they threw me on as a full-time assistant after that. So I graduated, like I leapfrogged a bunch of guys who were in line to become assistant engineers who were literally runners there for 6 months to a year. And I was probably a runner there maybe a month. And I jumped over all those guys and became assistant engineer. So that's kind of how you got to do it, man. You just got to jump in the fire. And
what was it about you? Was it just your ambition, your willingness to be flexible? Like, what exactly do you think was that difference for you to be able to take leaps over other people who I'm sure were qualified as well?
Probably just jumping in it with no fear, just doing it. I would think that would be my first guess and I think, the recommendation from the guy who brought me into that studio, he was a high profile mixer who booked the place all the time. So like when he came in and was like, hey, you need to hire my friend Ryan, he's my assistant. They kind of already knew, they had a little bit of confidence in me because this guy was vouching for me already. So that helped out a lot.
So while you're in California, you're clearly honing your craft, learning more things, getting a chance to get some more experience under your belt. What other musicians or artists did you get a chance to work with that way before you decided to? Because I think after that, you wound up relocating back to the East Coast. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was in LA for about 17 years.
Yeah.
And
it's a long time.
Then around 2008, 2009, the whole financial crumble, like records were really hard to come by if you're a freelance engineer. And if you didn't have a studio, you probably weren't working. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because people, if you're a producer or engineer and you had your own place, you're probably staying busy. But if you were still renting out big studios and trying to get an engineering fee and a studio fee, you probably weren't getting a lot of work, and work slowed down for me quite a bit during those years. And I had all this gear. Every dollar I ever made in the music industry, I bought gear with, and I never sold any of it. I have guitar pedals from when I was 16 years old still. I just kept everything, and I accumulated all this gear, and I had it sitting in a storage unit. First, I had it in my basement for a while. Then I had it in a storage unit. And then one of my other buddies who lives in Atlanta, he's a big time Grammy mixer there. He was like, dude, bring your stuff out to Atlanta and we'll build a room. And he's like, I'll book that thing every day and we'll get it going. So about 2010, I moved to Atlanta, and I did that for about 10 years.
Did you have were there any artists or bands or musicians that you really enjoyed working on that project? Like, and I'm sure there's a lot of them, but are there a few in particular you want to call out that you're really proud that's on your resume besides the Tupac?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's weird when you're an assistant engineer. Like back then, people used to make records where they would come to the studio for a month or 2, 3 months straight, and you would just live at the studio, and that's all you did was live and breathe that record for 2, 3 months. Nowadays, people come in for 4 hours at a time or 6 hours, 8 hours at a time, and that's how they make their records in pieces by pieces. So I got to spend a lot of time with like these bands in the studio for months and months, Foo Fighters, the Melvins, Fu Manchu, all these kind of killer rock bands, Power Man 5000, like all these bands would come through the studio, and I was the assistant engineer there. And I got to really like live and breathe these records that they were making for months on end. And you don't really get to do that nowadays with records, because you have to do them so fast. But yeah, like those kind of bands were like, I started with like the Tupac and Far Side and like the R&B music and stuff, but my heart was really towards the heavy rock stuff and stuff like that. So when I got over to another studio, Sunset Sound, where I was like one of the main assistants over there, I got to pick and choose what sessions I wanted to be on. And I always picked like the hard rock sessions and stuff like that, which was really awesome.
You have anybody you were working with that was helping to mentor you during this early phase in your career?
There's guys that I definitely looked up to that really helped me, that I still like. Joe Barisi. Joe Barisi's a huge producer, mixer, engineer. He did Tool, Queens of the Stone Age, Coheed and Cambria. He's mixed everything under the sun, Slipknot, Soundgarden, all that stuff. And he was the one, when I first met him on the Melvins record, that him and I just loved. I was already a fan of like the records that he did already. So when he came in, I was just like, I was glued to him. I was shadowing him everywhere he went in the studio. And, every trick or microphone setup technique that he did, I watched him closely. And then him and I just kind of became good friends. And, he came in and did a couple other records at Grandmaster when I worked there in Sunset. And he would always request me as an assistant. And, I always just stole all my technique. Everything I learned on how to record rock guitars and stuff is mainly from him, because he was the king. And I still use those techniques to this day. And then after doing that stuff and being freelance, I started engineering for Ross Robinson, who produced Slipknot, At the Drive-In, Korn, all that kind of stuff. And I engineered for him for about 5 years. And he was a very big influence on me too, on making records.
What would you say was one of your most earliest mistakes that you made during that time that maybe no one mentioned, but you knew that was probably an error?
Oh, probably just like patching errors. I don't think I ever did anything really bad where like erased anything or lost anything. Just like bad patching, stuff like that. I was very meticulous on my setups as an assistant engineer. I took great pride in it. Like I would show up hours early, maybe even a day early if the studio was available that day, and like put together these pristine setups and run my cables along the lines of the wall, so no, you don't see a lot of cables, and just make it look immaculate in there. And like producer engineers who know studio stuff, they'll walk in and be like, oh, this guy actually is into it, he knows what he's doing. And always wanted to make a pleasurable experience for the artist to be in there, and whether it's aesthetically, sonically, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And you can see that with your own studio, which we'll talk more about as well, because it seems.
Yeah, I still do that to this day. Like I've got matching mic cables and stuff like that. Like I'm very nerdy on that kind of stuff.
It's very aesthetically pleasing to the eyes when you can see how everything looks, at least from photos. Yeah. I can only imagine when you're there in person. So no, that's great, man. So you went out to Atlanta after California, came back to the East Coast. So why did you come back to the East Coast after? What was it? What happened in California that brought you to Atlanta?
Just the music market and housing market and all that stuff. Everything took a slowdown. I kind of got burnt out on working with Ross. I was with him for 5 years. I kind of wanted, and I started producing on my own. Like with Ross, I was just engineering and mixing. And up until then, I was an engineer mixer. And I really wanted to produce and be the guy in charge, have more creative input on the records and stuff like that than I already had. And I was already producing stuff on the side while I was engineering and mixing Ross. I Wrestled the Bear once, produced Emery. Those records while I was still living in LA, I was producing those while engineering and mixing with Ross. And I really just wanted to break away and kind of do my own thing. And that was like a big reason to go to Atlanta, not just because the work was slow in LA, but I could actually do my own thing and be my own person and have my own studio and like draw bands to me and stuff like that. That was like the main reason, was try to come into my own as a producer.
Yeah. And that makes sense. So when you were over in Atlanta, would you say you were doing more producing at that point?
No,
Okay.
no. Atlanta was like it was an eye-opening experience. There's no rock bands in Atlanta, like barely any. Mastodon's obviously the biggest one, but the rock scene and live music scene is just non-existent in Atlanta. And when I got to Atlanta, I did, that's when I met Whores and started working on their stuff. But I ended up being more of a studio manager than I was engineering, mixing, producing records. And that's kind of one of the main reasons why I left there was like my career as a producer, mixer, engineer slowed down because I was micromanaging the studio and booking the studio and that kind of stuff. And that kind of became more of my job, my everyday thing than actually working on records. And I really wanted to get back into like producing and mixing and engineering more than running a studio, you know. So that was one reason why I wanted to come to Tampa and do the studio. And also my dad got sick too, so I wanted to come back home and be closer to him.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. So that's what brought you back to Florida.
Tampa.
Was family related.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Did you ever go back and visit while you were in LA, California, or Atlanta? Or
yeah, I still have clients in LA and I go back all the time. And when I first started building this place, I was building it for about 3 months and I completely ran out of money. I miscalculated how much it was going to cost to build it. And so I had to go back to LA and work for about 4 months and make more money to come back and finish the studio here. So I still go back and forth now and then. It's few and far between as it was a year or two ago. I haven't been back in a year or so, but when I first moved here, I was going back and forth quite a bit to still work on stuff.
Were you still staying connected? Because you're obviously from Florida, were you at all still staying connected with the Tampa scene and some of the bands that were going on at that time? Or what was that like for you? No.
Not really. Yeah. I kind of didn't even know what was really going on.
Kind of out of sight, out of mind, I suppose, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so. But I kind of missed a lot of really great music.
Yeah. Well, your studio, Candor Studio, has a Candor Recording. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Has a history because before you came in and completely changed made it more studio like.
Gutted it.
Yeah, there you go. Gutted it. It has a story. It has a story because, well, at least as far as we know, there could be more backstory, but for what we know, it was actually had another life. So you want to talk about the studio a little bit and some of its history that you are aware of?
Yeah, when I was an intern at Radio Clash 95 YNF, that show, my friend Ron, who ran the show, he introduced me to Jen from the Genitorturers. And I've known Jen since that was like 92 or something like that. Her and I have stayed friends. And when she was touring and she would visit LA, she would always come stay at my house. And, me and her just stayed friends. And then I hadn't talked to her for a couple of years. And she heard that I was moving to Tampa to look for a studio. And she just hit me up out of nowhere and was like, hey, I got this building in downtown Tampa that used to be my old rehearsal place. It was the rehearsal place for Genitorturers and for Morbid Angel. And they bought that place back in the 90s. And she's like, it's just sitting there now. She's like, you can totally come move in there and take it over. She's like, I don't care what you want to do with it. And I was like, all right. So I went over, when I came to Florida, I drove over and I looked at it and walked through and I was terrified. It just looked brutal. It looked like metalheads have been living there for 25 years. Like it was really disgusting. It was bad.
What was the smell like when you first went in?
Old mold, 70s wood panel on the walls. Like the pictures, like the before picture I showed you, you could see the old wood panel on the walls. And it just had this like humid, moldy smell into it that you just could not get rid of. And that was my biggest concern when I gutted the place. Because even when I took out the drop ceiling, I ripped up the asbestos tile, I tore up all the old carpet, the paneling, everything, it still smelled moldy. And I was like, fuck, am I not going to be able to get rid of this moldy smell? And then once we started putting the drywall in and painting everything, it really covered up that moldy smell. And now you don't smell it at all. But yeah, like this building was Morbid Angel's, rehearsal spot for 20, 25 years.
Wow.
They had, when I walked in, there was a grease board with their song set list on there. A lot of their stuff was still here. A lot of gear, a lot of instruments, merch, that kind of stuff was all still here when I got in here. It was crazy.
That's interesting. It's almost like when you come across a business that's no longer there and you look inside the window and you still see like merchandise in there, like, wait a minute, why didn't anybody take this?
Yeah.
So did you ever find out why they never got their stuff? Like, did they know it was going to be taken over by somebody else?
Jen was married to Dave, the singer of Morbid Angel. They were
Yeah.
married and they bought the place together. And so it was kind of like a rehearsal, recording, hangout spot for both bands kind of thing. And I don't know the real true story, but I'm pretty sure she got the building in the separation of the divorce or something like that, because she owns it now. And then he took all his gear and went to Austin or wherever he's at now. So that was kind of like the reason why it was left like that, because the area is not, it's not the greatest area. It's literally on the cusp of gentrification. You go 2 blocks one way and you're in the hood, and 2 blocks the other way you're in a hipster brewery. And for years Jen said she was terrified to come down here and work on the place because she was scared to be a girl down here, and then to be a girl down here by herself opening the gate, because there's a big parking gate to come in to, and you got to be a kind of strong guy to open it. It's a pretty big gate. And she said she was always terrified to come down here and open it up and work on the place herself. But
I can imagine.
Yeah. So the place was left in pretty big disarray for a while. And then after Morbid Angel left the building and stuff like that, Jen still used it as her rehearsal spot. And it just smelled bad. It looked bad. It just looked like a rehearsal spot for 25 years. Like, you've seen the pictures. The pictures look brutal.
Yes.
So then I came in and I looked at the place and I was like, man, this place has amazing potential. It's in such a good spot. I'm like a mile from downtown Tampa, a mile from Ybor. I'm right in the middle, and it's such a great spot, man. This place is it's a secret that nobody knows about. It's such a killer spot. And it's on a 2-lot yard. So I have a huge yard with this giant oak tree out back. You can park out back. It's beautiful looking. So when I came in, I was like, man, this is going to be a lot of work. What am I going to do? Am I going to go for it? And I just said, fuck it. I started looking around at other spots to lease in Tampa and St. Pete. And it was just so ridiculous, the prices and everything. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford to do a build out and keep up a monthly rent and keep a place sustainable, here. And then I made a deal with Jen where, I told her I would do the gutting and I would build it all out if I got this much rent for how many years or whatever. And we did like a handshake deal. And so I just came in literally with a broom and just started pushing everything to one side of the building and just started ripping stuff apart, man. And then I brought in my buddy Eric Payne, who was he's a guitar player for Andrew WK, and he also has his own band Intoxicated from Orlando.
Right.
And he owns a painting company, and him and I have been friends for years. And he just came in and he drove over from Atlanta and helped me. And him and I just threw on a pair of gloves and some masks and just started gutting the place out, man. Yeah, it took us about 6 months about 3 months to gut it and get it looking halfway decent, and then 6 months from when we started to where we could have our first sessions.
Has Jen been back to see what you've done to the place?
Oh yeah, she loves it.
I was gonna say, what was her reaction when she because it's clearly, it's like sunshine, darkness. So it's a complete night and day.
During the whole process of doing it, I could tell she was very uneasy about it. She kept telling me, like, do whatever you want. I don't care what you do with it. Just don't lose the gear, break the gear. Just make sure my stuff is okay. And, I think she kind of had a little bit of that hoarder mentality. Like, when she would stop by while we were working on it, and she would see like what was going on in her building and all her stuff pushed to a corner, and it kind of made her uncomfortable and uneasy. So she would have to leave, but she would stop by periodically and check on the progress. And, she saw my studio in Atlanta and how we built that. So I showed her pictures of that and was like, trust me, it's going to be good when it's done. It's just going to take a lot of work. And she stopped by periodically and checked on it. And then when it finally got done, she comes by quite often and it's like, she loves it. Of course she loves it. It transformed her whole building.
Absolutely. I mean, how do you not?
Yeah.
Have you had any contact
And
at all with?
hopefully I'll be able to buy it from her soon.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the ultimate goal.
That's the goal right there, right? Have you had any
But
contact
she's
at
not
all?
ready to release it yet. Pardon me?
Any contact at all with with anyone in Morbid Angel?
No, I haven't talked to any of them. No, but I was going to hit up their ex-drummer, Pete Sandoval, because there's a box of his T-shirts here that say Pete the Feet on them or something like that. And it's like his big picture. And there's literally a box of like 50 of his T-shirts. And I was going to send him a social media message like, hey, dude, I got a bunch of these T-shirts if you want me to send them to you. I'm sure he would take them. It's funny because I had friends stop by, like Brian Schaefer, who owns Skate Park of Tampa, and he brought his buddy over who's a death metal freak. And like when they walked in the building, like he went nuts and was like, can I have one of these T-shirts? And I'm like, I guess it's all right. Go ahead and take one. And he was so stoked just to walk around and see like the Morbid Angel history in here. It's funny, like death metal fans are crazy like that. They'll go drive by Thoroughbred Music where it used to be just because that was like the death metal spot.
Right. Were you, I know you may have been more into the punk side, more alternative side of music earlier on. At any point, did you ever get into the death metal scene? And did you know at any point before this how influential it was in Tampa and it was kind of like a breeding ground for death metal bands in the 80s and 90s?
I always liked Obituary. Obituary was one of those bands that they weren't like, my problem with death metal is them trying to sell the scary gimmick. You're not scaring anybody. Like, come on, man. You know what I mean? Like the elf ears and the all black and just play fucking heavy music. And that's what I liked about Obituary was they weren't trying to sell you a gimmick. They're just real and heavy and badass. And that's a band I always gravitated towards, like a Tampa band and stuff like that. I don't care about the inverted fucking burnt cross in your forehead and that kind of dumb shit. Like that stuff that has nothing to do with the music to me. That's just all a gimmick to sell shit. But Obituary was just one of those bands that was just heavy and brutal from day one, and they never really steered away from that. I never, like the whole time I was here, and even after I left, I didn't understand how big the death metal thing was here in Tampa until I was in LA. And then even working with Joe Barisi, like he went to USF and he was from Tampa. And, he used to always talk about these death metal bands and all these other guys that I worked with. They were just like, man, did you ever work with any of these? And I was like, no, I left kind of before all that stuff took off. And, I didn't really appreciate it until I came back to Florida and was like, oh, wow, that was actually a pretty fucking magnificent scene that was going on.
Oh yeah. And it's stood the test of time for sure. A lot of those bands, because Morris Sound is also in Tampa. Did you ever get an opportunity to tour that studio or see it?
Yeah, back in the day, the guy who I did 95 YNF Radio Clash with, because he was also a radio personality on the Ron and Ron show, which was like the big comedy morning show. And so they had him put together this fake punk band called the Dead German Tourists. Do you remember that? When like the German tourists were being murdered in Florida or something like that. So then he made up this fake punk band called Dead German Tourists. And so they went to Morrisound to record their record and I tagged along. And that was the first time I got to like really see like a big recording studio and watch them do their thing. And that was the old Morrisound that was kind of by the skate park, not the new one.
Okay. Yeah. The original one.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to meet Scott?
That was the first and only time I ever been there. And I was just blown away. Like I think at that time I was going to Full Sail. So it was like a huge deal for me to actually come and see a studio over here and stuff like that. So that's why my friend Ron called me. I was like, hey, we're going in the studio. You should come hang out and see what it's like. So that was like my first time ever in the studio.
What was the most intimidating part of seeing a studio like that?
I wouldn't say it was intimidating. It was just exciting. Like I wanted to be there all the time. Like I just wanted to be in that room and just learn it and be, I don't think it was very intimidating. I'd never get intimidated. I like to attack problems head on and just go for it. So yeah, I think we were in the B room too. It wasn't even the big room, but we got to tour the big room. I forget who was in there and I got to see their whole setup and it was just it was just different to see how big and elaborate setups that bands had back then and stuff like that. Like, you really don't see those kind of setups anymore because everyone's trying to do stuff super fast nowadays. They don't have time to spend in the studio.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can only imagine how vast some of the gear is and the different rooms that exist and all that.
Yeah, those rooms were beautiful. Those were awesome studios. Those places were great.
Did you
Big
at all
consoles, tape machines?
When you were putting your own studio together, did you at all take anything like, oh, I like that idea. That's kind of cool. Like different studios that you got a chance to see over the years. Was there anything that you may have like really liked that you wanted to make sure you had in your own studio?
I mean, the way studios are set up now is all basically down to budget. You know what I mean? And the way I built this studio is everything comes down to budget. Of course, there's a million things I'd like to do that like a giant, corporate giant studio place has, but I can't afford to do it. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't think I took anything specifically from it. I know I wanted to have a separate control room and tracking room. I wanted to have a big tracking room. In Atlanta, I didn't have a big tracking room. I just had small vocal booths, and because we mainly did hip hop, rap, trap, R&B, that kind of stuff, you don't need a live tracking room for that. So, I really wanted to have a big room to like spread out my microphones and record live bands and stuff like that. Like the first two Horrors records we did at my studio in Atlanta, and the drum sounds are very tight sounding because they're vocal booth drum sounds. We did all that stuff in the vocal booth and stuff like that. And I tried to emulate room sounds. And so when I got here in Tampa, soon as I started setting up mics and recording bands, I just started pulling all my mics back and like getting the air in the room and getting more like live room sound recordings and, bring myself back to like my original days in LA of being able to work in a big room, which makes a huge difference. So that was the main thing, was just mainly having a big enough tracking room or space for people to spread out and be able to spread out the microphones and stuff like that and capture sounds that weren't just directly close mic sounds, that were far away kind of sounds, and be able to experiment with that kind of stuff. So as it comes down to gear and stuff, that all comes down to budget.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I would imagine, especially the amount that you likely put into bringing this building back to life, because it was definitely not in the best space to be a studio and practice space. Yeah. So is all that
the building is divided in two, but luckily there's a concrete wall. Like I don't have a traditional control room, tracking room with the glass window pane where you can see through the tracking room. There's a door, obviously, you can walk through, but there's no window where you can see, and which is beneficial because there's a big concrete wall to separate the two. So you have pretty good isolation between the control room and the tracking room.
So one of the things that I could see from the photos that you shared from the before and after, one of the few things that really stands out as a way to see the old look to the new look are the lights. Talk about the lights for a minute, because the lights you kept. Why did you keep the lights?
The light you see in the background over my shoulder, that's one of the lights that I kept. That was because that's just an awesome looking light. That looks like a goth light that should be in a castle or something. And those are the only things I really kept. And then when I was building the place, Jen stopped by and she was like, hey, I found these lights at this pawn shop store, these big silver like can lights. She's like, you should go check them out. They're really cool looking. You can see them in the after photo I showed you, or I sent you, that has the tracking lights. There's these big silver lights, 4 of them I have hanging in the tracking room. And like, as soon as I saw those, I was like, I knew I had to add something aesthetically cool to the tracking room besides just some rugs and some cool paint, So I went out and bought those things. I found them, or she found them, and she told me where they were at, and I went and bought them. They were like $400 a piece. And so me and Eric hung those up, and after he painted the walls, and they really kind of set the tone of the room, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
And then the other lights, I put hue bulbs and everything, so you can control the colored lighting and everything. And then I got track lighting right behind me with the hue bulbs and everything. So yeah, like my thing with studios is I try to stimulate the senses when you walk in, either have really nice smells of like coffee, incense, or weed, and then visual stimulation of lights and colors and everything. So you feel like you step into a different world. So you feel comfortable. Like everybody, as soon as they come in here, they go, oh, this place is so comfortable. It's got a great vibe. And it's because it doesn't look like, it's not bright like a fucking hospital or anything. Like I see some pictures of these other studios and it's super bright like a hospital. I'm like, why would anyone want to record there? That looks terrible. And the kind of way I have the control room set up is like I got my desk, computer, speakers, and then I got the couch, coffee table behind me. So it's almost like a living room kind of vibe.
Right.
So it's like an extension of like a giant bedroom studio almost. So people feel really comfortable when they come here and, with the smells and the visuals and then obviously the sonics of everything, you just get pulled into that world to where you forget about everything and you're just immersed in here. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about being an assistant engineer and, the way we used to do records back in the day where you would just be in the studio for months and just immerse yourself and forget about everything. And that's what I wanted to do here because there's no windows here at all. You have no idea what it's like outside. You're literally locked in away from the world, which is great. You have no distractions, which is awesome.
And you need that, I'm sure, right? Because you don't want that when you're in the middle of doing anything.
Absolutely. What's great though is we got the picnic table and the big yard outside. So if you want to, you can just go walk outside and you got fresh air and hang out outside. The yard is really nice. That tree is one of the coolest trees I've ever seen. So I just love hanging out under that tree on the picnic table too. It's a good place for people to go smoke cigarettes and just clear their ears from being in there and stuff like that.
I also really love the color scheme when I had a chance to see the inside of the studio. Talk about that for a minute because it has a very Tampa vibe to it.
Yeah, the orange has the old school Tampa Bay Buccaneers colors. I kind of wanted to throw in some of that just to kind of bring it home to Tampa, the orange with the Bucks and the sunshine and stuff like that. My original concept was like that orange brown 70s retro kind of look. You know what I mean? That's what I sent the guy who did my logo and stuff like that. I sent him references to that old 70s kind of brown and orange look. And so it kind of, I wanted the studio to kind of feel like almost feel nostalgic, like 70s style, but also be very modern. You know what I mean? So I wanted to throw that color scheme into like a modern studio. And then when we were painting the place, Eric, he did the ceiling black, he did the walls gray, and we got to the floor and I didn't even think about the floor or anything. And he was like, what color you want to do the floor? I'm going to Home Depot right now. You got to make a decision. And I was like, oh, fuck. I was like, let's do it orange. And he was just like, geez, orange is literally the hardest color to fucking make stick besides yellow. So like we had to do the floor and everything we painted orange, we had to do literally like 3 or 4 times.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, like once we started to put the paint on the orange, I could send you more progress pictures, but once we hit the floor on the orange, then I knew like, all right, this place is going to be fucking awesome. This is going to be badass.
It looks great. I mean,
thank you. I appreciate it.
It looks really, really nice, and I love the color scheme. Love that it has a Tampa vibe because the old Bucks colors, and you have to go with the classic Bucks. I mean, nothing wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing wrong with the more recent Bucks. What do you call logo? But yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah. Let people know that I'm old school Tampa, even though I've just been here for 2 years.
What would you say is the most, what's the biggest difference for you, being gone for so long, then coming back to open up the studio? What do you think changed the most coming back to Florida?
Obviously the area has changed dramatically. Like they put a lot of money into downtown. I used to go skateboard down there and it used to be gnarly down there. You'd be kind of scared to skate down there sometimes. And, you go down by Curtis Hickson Park, where the amphitheater is and stuff like that. And it used to be gnarly kind of down there. And we used to go to 911, that club down there and stuff like that. And it was just it wasn't very friendly to hang out there at night and all that kind of stuff. And coming back here and seeing the Riverwalk and all that stuff and it's this so close to the studio, it's walking distance to the studio a mile away. And you're just like, this is totally different than what I grew up around. It's completely different. And then also the music is, the main thing I've noticed when I came back is how good the musicians are here. Like everyone is a fucking ripping player. There's so many smoking players. Everyone that comes through here is a fucking awesome player, whether it's a indie rock St. Pete band or a heavy Tampa band. Everybody can fucking play, which is awesome. And I think, with the influx of people moving here and all the new bands and stuff, that there is like a scene that's going to be popping soon, man, because there's so many people. It just has to. It's about to boil over. There's so many good bands playing right now.
What local bands are on your radar that you've had a chance to see live so far since you've been back?
Liquid Pennies is an indie rock band from Tampa. We just did their EP. They're awesome, amazing live band. You got to see them play. They're smoking. Pilot Waves, The Drain Outs, Sons of James, Super Mutant Human Skin, Heaven's Gate. I saw them play. They were awesome. Intoxicated, Eric's band is ripping. They're playing with Heaven's Gate next month. Like just a lot of the St. Pete bands, man. Like the Benz has a lot of cool bands that play. All these breweries are starting to play a lot of these bands too. It's really cool. All these venues are kind of like, the new Orpheum is opening, New World Brewery. All these awesome venues are opening, and all these other bands, like even touring bands, are coming here more, it seems like, than they did in the past. Everyone's kind of starting to cut through here, and there's a lot of good local bands right now, man.
Yeah.
I really hope like a scene blows up.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, certainly. And especially if folks are coming through your door to do some recording and all that. So do you approach it any differently, or is there a different mindset when you might be recording a band or an artist outside of Florida versus like a local band that maybe you have a chance to get to know the people a bit more?
Well, if a band's coming from out of state, they usually have a budget, and they can stay a little bit longer, and we can take a little more time and stuff like that. More of the local bands, they're almost all the local bands that come in, they either come in on Saturday or Sunday, or they come in after 6 o'clock on Fridays, because they're all DIY bands. Everyone's got day jobs and stuff like that. So the local bands that come in, we just have a limited amount of time to really work on stuff. That's usually the main difference from bands that are coming from out of state and stuff like that. And then I do a lot of mixing where people just send me files. Like I just mixed a band from Italy that sent me stuff. And, I just get a lot of stuff from out of state or from other countries where they just want me to mix, where they don't necessarily want me to produce or record it or anything like that. I'm just doing straight mixing.
Yeah. You mentioned that term before. And for those that don't know, when you say mixing, what exactly does that entail in layman's terms?
You're taking all the elements, the tracks from recording, and mixing them to the specifics of what the artist and what you want, what you think should be loudest in the mix, whether it's, drums, bass, guitars, vocals, that kind of stuff, and making everything cohesive, sound smooth, not bright, not boomy, not crispy, just make everything cohesively smooth and push the elements in the song that are going to help bring out the song, the most, you know what I mean? Like death metal you got to have the kick drum in death metal. You got to be able to have that kick drum way up. That's one of the biggest things. So it's usually genre specific. Pop likes vocals really loud. A lot of stuff I do is very guitar orientated. I love recording guitars. It's one of my favorite things, and so I generally mix guitars pretty heavy on my mixes. So I usually get bands that want guitars heavy in their mixes. That's why they usually come to me, is because they like the way my guitars sound on a lot of my records.
Do you think anyone has, or maybe this has happened, has anyone approached you before and said that they want a certain sound? Like, you worked on this record, they want a sound that is kind of in that same vein. Has that happened yet to you? And if so, which project do you think has been more of your calling card?
Well, back probably like 10 years ago, it was the Eels. The Eels, I've done probably like 8 or 9 records with them. I don't know if you don't know them, they had that big song, not Beautiful Freak, Novocaine for the Soul back in the 90s. And then they've put out tons of records. I've done like 9 of them. They're kind of like a folk pop kind of band, almost. I guess you would call them that, alternative rock. When I did a bunch of their records, I would get requests from people all over the world, like from different countries and stuff like that wanted me to mix stuff that sounded like theirs. And so I was getting stuff genre specific to those kind of records. And then once I did the Horrors record in Atlanta, then I started getting a lot of requests from bands that wanted that very aggressive sound. And that kind of like, from after doing Horrors, that kind of became my sound of like everything very compressed, saturated, distorted, very aggressive, in your face kind of stuff. So I get a lot of like heavy bands that want that very aggressive sound, because I do mix very aggressively. I mix guitars heavy, vocals kind of low, and everything is just blown out, saturated, you know, a little bit overdrive and distortion on everything, and it's just super aggressive sounding.
So would you say,
and
like,
that's
that?
kind of, I stole all that from Joe Barresi, from working with him on Melvins and stuff like that, because that's all his stuff used to be like the first Queens of the Stone Age record. That record sounds incredible, you know. And then he also did Era Vulgaris, I think it was. No, wait, what's the other one he did? I forget, but his records always sound very aggressive, but also clean and punchy and you know, sonically beautiful, but also very aggressive at the same time. And I really dig that kind of style of mixing.
Yeah. Is there anything that you feel like you haven't done that you'd like to perhaps try to do? Any other types of music that you think would be more of a challenge to jump into?
Man, I've never really recorded like jazz or blues stuff, and I know there's a big jazz blues scene going on in St. Pete. I just don't know anybody in that world, and I would love to work with like some of those kind of musicians that, you know, that their level of musicianship is just incredible, and just, you know, have one of those live jazz bands in here and just mic everybody up at once and get live recordings off the floor would be awesome to do. Be really cool. I'd really like to meet some guys who are into that scene that would like to do that.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. And that's what, and that's the thing is, you know, there's these little other pockets of different scenes that go on in certain areas, and getting a chance to have different types of artists and musicians come in, and, you know, because are you also a fan of that type of music yourself personally?
Absolutely. I love all kinds of music, man. I usually listen to whatever opposite style of music of what I'm working on at the moment, just so my ears and my head can get away from that. And I don't want to ever copycat anybody either. I want to have my own perspective on things. So if I'm listening to heavy music, I would subconsciously make something sound like what I was listening to in my car or something like that without even knowing it. So I specifically try not to like listen to stuff that's even remotely in the same vein of what I'm working on at the moment.
How often do you take music you're working on in the studio home with you, or when you're out in the car? Do you take that out a lot to take it in? Like, what is that like for you?
If I'm checking mixes in the car, yeah. But otherwise, if I'm going home after the studio, I'm usually on dead silence, driving with just the windows down,
There you go.
and the wind blowing through, because you're in here for 10-12 hours a day listening to all different levels of music, whether it's quiet or loud or anything, and you just kind of need that ear break when you leave. And you know, when you leave after a long day like that, you can't really make a judgment, you know. So then I'll usually print it or something and then listen to it on my way back into the studio and make those mental notes before I come in and make the tweaks on it before moving on.
It makes sense. Yeah. White noise is sometimes the best thing to listen to after a long day of work. So
absolutely.
I know,
and I do all kinds of music. It's not just like heavy music specific. I always want to work on anything that's with live instrumentation and stuff like that. I even listen to a lot of electronic music too. So, you know, I've got tons of keyboards and drum machines, and I can do a lot of programming and stuff like that. So it's not just like live hard rock that I work on. It's all types of music.
Right. And that's great. So hopefully those that are checking out the interview, if you're in a band or you're looking to record and you're in the area, or maybe you're not, maybe you want to commute up to Tampa and check out the studio. You know, certainly
come on by. I'll give you the tour. Give you the dime tour.
There you go. Yeah. The Ashtray Monument guys hooked us up together. So talk about your relationship with Ashtray Monument, and maybe some of the bands you've worked on who are on that label.
I know Lewis. I've only known him for a couple of years, but I've been friends with his brother since high school. And when I moved back, I was at his brother's bar, and then I kind of met Lewis. I knew of him. I just didn't really know him very well. And him and I just started talking, and he was telling me he had this this, it's funny. I always yell at him because he undersells himself all the time. He'll approach you and be like, hey, I have this really small label called Ashtray. And I'm like, dude, don't ever say that to people. Like, say, I have a fucking record label. Don't ever undersell yourself like that. That shit drives me crazy. And he always does that. I always make fun of him for it. But him and I were talking about the label and everything. And then all of a sudden, the other owner of the label, Jay, who's in the band Super Mutant Human Skin, if you haven't heard them, they're fucking awesome. He hit me up to do some mixing for them. And that, I think, was the first thing that I did for them. And we just became good friends. And I just love those guys because they're legitimately music fans. They love music. Like, they know everything about every band everywhere all the time. And like, they school me on music knowledge all the time. Like, they're just diehard fans and they're going to every show all the time. And so I did the Super Mutant Human Skin, and then they put me in touch with Sons of James, which is a Newport Richie kind of like pop punk band who are really good. We're doing their record right now. Then the Liquid Pennies band from St. Pete, they heard them. Lewis came over here and heard what I was mixing. They fell in love with the band, so they're putting that record out. Another band called Pilot Waves, who's from that St. Pete indie scene, they're gonna do some stuff with them also. So yeah, they got a lot of cool stuff going on, man. What I dig about them, and they're he says they're a small label and all that kind of stuff, but what I like about them is their dedication to music, but also everyone uses them as like a community thing. Like, we're kind of lacking that musician community thing here, and like having Ashtray being around here, even though they're a small label, everyone really digs them, and what they got going on is cool because it's a small community of people doing stuff together, which is awesome.
Oh, I agree. And there's more than just Florida bands on Ashtray, but there definitely are there definitely are
Florida bands. They got a lot of cool stuff.
A lot of cool
Lewis
stuff.
is actually in New Orleans right now at one of their bands, High, who's also on their label. He's at their wedding right now with Pricked. And they also do Monufest, which is their music festival. They've done it twice now in Newport Richie. They do that yearly and have some of their bands play, and they're going to have some of the bands I work with play on that too. And that's always a good time.
When you attend,
those guys are awesome. They're just diehard music fans, and, and I just love their attitude towards everything.
When you attend a festival like that, or a show of any kind, how often are you networking to promote your studio, and how does that usually come about for you when you're at a loud concert?
Man, I am terrible at promotion. I am so bad at it. I've always have like a cringe filter for me. You know what I mean? I'm very, very conscious on how I'm represented and how I'm presented. You know what I mean? So I don't have any ads. Almost all my stuff is word of mouth, and from other bands to other bands, or from friends like Lewis to other bands and stuff like that. I'm really bad at promoting myself. I got to do better at that stuff. But everything just seems so cringy to me. I hate selling myself. I always let my work sell it for me. You know what I mean? I never want to be one of those studios that you see that has the ad that's like, hey, $300, come in for the weekend and you record 4 songs. Like, I never wanted to be like that. I wanted to always be something special for the artist to come in and do, not like a cookie cutter hourly thing. That's why I never it was weird when I was in LA, all the studios never booked by the hour. The ones that I worked at, it was either you pay for a full day or you can do a half day rate. Some of them didn't even do half day, but they didn't even do hourly. And then when I got to Atlanta, everything was by the hour, it was just so foreign to me to like do music by the hour. I just never understood that. And it was like a hard concept to gravitate towards. So like when bands come in here and they only book for like 4 hours and they're like looking at their watch the whole time, I'm like, calm down, man. I'm not that like strict on it. Let's just make sure we do it right and make sure it's good. You know what I mean? Before anything. But,
since you've had the new studio, have you had any bands or anyone crash at the studio because it was such a late night of working on something?
The Horrors record that we're working on, we're almost done with it, and they're basically out of money. So when he comes down to do vocals, he sleeps in the tracking room usually. And same with another band, Ozorn from Long Beach. We're finishing up their record, and they're like, both of those singers are screaming singers. So when they come here, they literally blow their voices out on the first day. And so you can't do it. One's from Atlanta, one's from Long Beach, and they travel all the way here, do their vocals. They blow their stuff out the first day. And then you got to wait a day or two to even do more vocals. And both those guys slept in the tracking room. I set up an air mattress for them, and they just sleep here and just grind it out.
There you go.
Yeah, I love bands that aren't afraid to work, that just want to grind it out, because I'm all for it, man.
Yeah.
Especially when they don't have any money.
Well, describe real quick a typical day for you. What day? When do you start? When does it end?
I usually wake up about 9. I'm a yoga dude, so I wake up and do my stretching, have my espresso and my green tea, and go in the studio and just start. I'll usually first thing in the studio, I'll get to studio like 11 or something and start firing up the gear, and I'll start tweaking on either, like, most time people ask me for updated mixes or stems and stuff like that. And I try to take care of all the bullshit stuff before I really get into who's coming into that day. So they're like, hey, can you print me this? Can you print me that? I got to tackle all that stuff in the morning before I even get started on stuff. So I'm usually doing like the busy work stuff in the morning, and then depends what time people are coming in, I'll just start jumping into sessions. And usually I'll do sessions till about 9 or 10 at night, taking breaks for dinner and stuff like that. I'll take breaks to work on the website, try to do a little social media stuff. Social media is my main form of advertising, but I don't really advertise. I try to do like, creative artistic pictures and stuff like that, just to, visually stimulating stuff, just to kind of have an artistic vibe to stuff. I don't ever try to just sell myself. Like I said, I can't stand that shit. I'm here 10, 11 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week. Even when I don't have sessions, I come here and hang out and play video games and watch TV. It's like my fort here, man.
Yeah.
I love it here.
It's like your second home.
I got people stopping by all the time. People come by all the time to hang out. It's funny when people get here, it's hard to get people to come here, but once they get here, they don't want to leave. They want to just stay and hang out here.
It's got a nice vibe to it. It just seems like it would be a nice chill place to just sit on the couch and just
smells good. There's good coffee. There's snacks, TV, video games.
Yeah.
Nice couch. AC's pumping.
There you go.
That's the main thing everyone complains about me, because I'm a Florida guy and I love the heat. So they'll come in and it'll be like 78 degrees in here, and they're like, Jesus Christ,
that's
you fucking
warm.
lizard.
That's
turn
a little,
the AC on.
That's a little hot.
Yeah, I love the heat, dude. I love it. Love it. That was one of my main reasons for moving from Atlanta. It was just way too cold there. From October to March, you can't even go outside for me. So that shows you I'm Florida through and through.
Yeah.
But if I could, I would be in here with a tank top on and boxers mixing if no one was here. I love it.
If you had like a remote studio, you could do that. Nobody would know, right? And so
that's why I always thought having a studio out in Joshua Tree in the desert heat would be fucking awesome. I would love that. I love the heat. Despise the cold. I don't even like a fan blowing on me when I sleep. I can't stand it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that bad.
78 degrees from what you just described sounds perfectly fine for you.
Yeah, every time people come here, I got to crank that AC down to 71, 72. They're just dying in here.
That's to me, that's hot. I like 68. Perfect. Good temperature.
Really? Oh yeah.
I like it nice.
I would have a hoodie on. See, you got a hoodie on too.
I just
68 degrees.
Hey, that's right. So out of all the things you had a chance to learn over the years, now that you have your own recording studio, what was the greatest lesson that you feel like you had a chance to learn that has set you up for success with your own studio?
How to work with artists and communicate with them. That's extremely important, to communicate with artists and have that open dialogue with them, so that they're getting everything that they want out of the process, and you're getting them to give you everything to put into the process. Just learning how to communicate and deal with artists. You kind of wear multiple hats when you're a producer, especially if you're engineering for yourself and mixing it all yourself. Like a lot of producers have other guys that work with them, and I kind of do everything myself. And so you kind of got to play a little bit of psychiatrist role with members in the band too, and stuff like that. And, just being confident with my skills and being able to convey that to the artists and communicate with the artists and get the best out of them. That's probably the main thing I've learned is having that confidence and being able to communicate with artists and have direct conversations with them about their project and what they're working on or the performance or that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times bands come in here and they're not ready, and you got to have these conversations with them and stuff like that.
Right.
And, some band members can't take it and some can take it. Like a lot of people come in here and they insist on not using a click, and then as soon as I hear them on the drums, I'm just like rolling my eyes like, dude, you need to at least go home and practice to a click before you come in and play, because you're swaying left and right like crazy. You're speeding up, slowing down, and like a lot of guys don't like to hear that. So there's a way to approach people to get the best out of them without making them feel bad and stuff like that, and just learning how to work with artists and being sensitive to what they're doing. Because I always forget too, when people come in here, I'm in here all the time, 24/7, 7 days a week. So it doesn't seem like a special place every day to me. And every time someone new comes in, their eyes light up and they see the instruments and the place, and they're just like, it's wonderland to them. And to me, it's like my bedroom, you know what I mean? And I got to remember to always like treat it special with the artist too, because it is a special thing for them to be here and be able to like give themselves to the studio so that you can record and do your best work for them. You want them extremely comfortable and be able to just give and not hold back at all in the studio and not be afraid, because a lot of people are intimidated when they first walk in the studio and they're like, oh shit, and you are kind of like put under a microscope when you're in a studio, and a lot of drummers do that when they'll hear themselves play and like, oh, I got this, and they'll come in and hear themselves on the speakers and go, oh shit, maybe I should have practiced a little bit more, stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, you are under a microscope and it is sensitive, and you are kind of like, the artist is giving everything that they've built their whole life up towards playing and putting it out on this thing. And you just got to be very conscious on how you handle that. Some people are sensitive about it. Some people don't give a shit, but, I always take the approach of like, treat everything with care. And if you show the artist respect, they're going to give you a little bit more and stuff like that.
What do you think is the most rewarding part of your job?
A finished product and having people say how great it is and how much the music means, not how great it is, but how much it means to them and stuff like that. Like people telling you that record changed their lives, or that record helped them through high school, or that record, they listened to it on road trips, stuff like that. Like that to me feels the best, when people like really remember the records that you worked on and stuff like that. Because music meant the same thing to me growing up, and it still does. It's just, it resonates. Certain songs, certain artists, certain everything resonates with you, and you connect with that, and you kind of just want to make those more connections. It's all about just making those connections.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And out of all the things you had a chance to work on so far, obviously there's more to come. So when you look back on some of the things you've done, were there any moments where you said to yourself, I can't do this, or it was a missed opportunity for whatever reason, it didn't happen, and then you kind of kick yourself later on and say, man, I wish I would have did that? Have you had any of those moments in your 25 years yet?
I don't have any regretful moments. My main thing was like, I started to like become a freelance engineer and make a name for myself as an engineer as budget started to drop. Like I missed the whole boat of like the big budget records and stuff like that. Like when I was an assistant engineer at the studios, these bands would come in with $100,000 budgets. And, they would have a $300 a day food budget. And like these budgets were just astronomical. And you would just work on these records for months and months and months. And nowadays it's not like that anymore. And that's the only thing I regret, is that I just kind of missed the boat on on getting paid on those kind of records and like being able to make those style of records anymore. That's the only bummer.
Any different?
Hopefully bands will start making money again, streaming and stuff like that. Streaming's getting better and better. And, hopefully bands, I always try to tell bands, like, invest in yourself, man. LLC your band. Go get a fucking loan or a credit card under your band name, under your business. Treat your band like a business. If you don't treat it like a business, no one else is going to either. If you just want to have fun and play on the weekends, that's cool. But if you want to do this seriously, you got to treat it like a business. You got to be smart about it. And yeah, and that includes your recording budget and stuff like that. It's funny because producers, engineers, mixers, those guys are always the first people to get shafted on money. They're the first person everyone looks at to cut corners on stuff. And it shouldn't be. It should be the first thing you want to spend and pay money for, because they're the ones guiding you through the studio process and actually giving you your final product of what you're going to be selling and giving out and connecting with people with. So, you know, I always tell bands, man, invest in yourself. You believe in yourself, invest in yourself, man. Go get a credit card for $3,000 to $5,000 and go make a record and invest in yourself. Treat it like a band. Work it every day. It's funny, like you see bands with 4 or 5 members in the band and only one person's doing everything. One person's doing all the social media. One person's booking the shows. One's doing that. Like, you got 4 or 5 people in there, man. If everyone just kind of collectively and put themselves together, you guys would be a lot farther along than what you really are. You know what I mean? I just try to preach smart business tactics to bands. You know, you really got to treat it like a business. I mean, I should probably be taking my own advice because I don't advertise myself either.
Well, this is
I'm
a
good at giving advice. I'm not good at taking my own advice.
This is a good way to advertise, though, as well. So, getting a chance to talk about talk about your studio and some of the work you've had a chance to do, and just a little bit more about you, who you are. Well,
that's why I wanted to do the podcast, because it is an organic way of advertising myself and presenting myself without being cheesy or something like that. You know, it is a very natural and organic way to go about doing it, which I'm totally all for.
Yeah. More your style, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
That's great, man. Yeah. So it's been wonderful getting a chance to chat today and talk more about yourself and about Candor and some of the things you've worked on. So for anyone that's interested in learning more about the studio, getting more information, we'll include the link to the studio right in the description of the interview. So make sure you look out for that if you want to check out more about Candor Recording Studios. And are there any projects that you can give a little hint about, something you haven't mentioned yet that's coming up? Any irons in the fire, so to speak?
I've got like 3 records, that full lengths, that we're trying to finish right now. The Horrors record, Ozorn record, Sons of James. Like those are the records that are kind of currently working on, that probably still are about a month away from finishing. We're not even in the mixing process yet, but they're just about to be done recording. So those are the 3 ones that are taking up most of my time right now. Yeah.
And I'm sure that can change at any moment, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I got a band from Atlanta coming down at the end of March called Pretty Please. And they sent me their demos, and they're fucking awesome. They're like a raw Nirvana, great songwriting. They've already produced their demos up like crazy, because when I was talking to the singer, I was like, dude, you want to just go off of your demos and build off of those? Because it sounds like you did a lot of work on it, you know. And he's like, no, well, let's just start from scratch. I want to do everything from scratch with you. And I was like, hell yeah. So those guys are coming in at the end of the month, and I'm really looking forward to that, because the songwriting on that is just incredible. I love new bands. I love working with brand new bands and guiding them through the recording process.
I was wondering.
Yeah, there's another band I'm working with right now called the Drainouts. They're a St. Pete band. They're kind of in that same scene as Pilot Waves and Liquid Pennies and Ashtray Monument kind of bands. And I've been working with them. They were here on Friday night, and they're awesome, talented band. They remind me of like old Replacements, like Pleased to Meet Me Replacements. And it's really cool, because no one's really doing that kind of sound right now. And they do it really, really well. And they got great songs. So we're kind of like in the middle of that record too.
It's great that a lot of these bands are popping up in the general area, and hopefully there's more, because you did mention that, you know, the scene is starting to become a little bit more alive. There's a lot of different stuff popping up, and across different genres too, which is always important. So, and
a lot of these bands are close with each other, and they play a lot of shows together and stuff like that. So that's how I've got to work with a lot of these bands, is word of mouth. Is like, hey, we just went over to Candor and did our EP with Ryan. You should check it out. And they listen to it. They'll hit me up. They're like, that sounds fucking amazing. We want to come over there. And that's mainly how I've gotten a lot of my work in the past 6 months, is word of mouth from these bands and these scenes, like just talking about me and stuff. So it's really cool.
Yeah. No, that's great, man. Because if people are digging the sound and they want the Ryan Bush sound, hopefully they'll be they'll
And
be
I just like the
wonderful.
organic way of
Mm,
getting work like that, of people wanting to work with me and
mm,
not chasing down people like, hey, come on in my studio.
right.
I like people seeking me out, wanting to work with me, and and when they do get here and they do record with me, they're never going to want to go anywhere else again, because I just, I put so much into it. I put way more into it than way above and beyond the call of duty of what I'm being paid for it, because I just love it so much. And I'm just, I don't want anything to ever come out that isn't 100% fire. You know what I mean?
Right.
That has my name on it. And I always tell that to people too that are making records, and or bands that I'm making records with. Like, don't ever play stuff for people that isn't ready, that you don't think is 100% fire. I hate disclaimers of like, hey, let me play you this. Oh, it's not completely mixed yet, or these aren't the real vocals, or we're going to do this or that. Like, I hate disclaimers like that. Don't play it unless you know it's pure fucking fire and you're going to blow people's heads off. You know what I mean? And I always tell these bands that, like, don't play your shit until it's ready, you know? So, yeah, I go off on these tangents sometimes.
Well, I can imagine, with all your experience that you have, having a chance to work with so many different people and what have you across different, types of music and different age groups and what have you, experience levels. I'm sure you've seen your share of things where you have to kind of, so reel it in sometimes. Like, look, this is
Oh yeah,
this is how it is, man.
yeah. I've been in every
Mm,
possible recording situation you can think
mm,
of. There's nothing
mm.
I haven't done in the studio. So yeah, all the way from orchestra stuff to like just drum machine stuff to rap, rock, country, classical music, everything. I've done it all.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great. It's great, man. It's been a pleasure having you on today, Ryan. Thank you so much for taking the time
Oh,
out to
damn, that went by
chat.
fast.
Hey, you know, uh, time flies when
That's
you're
what happens when you get me blathering.
there. You go, man. That's what it's all about. That's what the podcast is all about. So glad I had a
I
chance to
don't think I've ever talked about myself this much my whole life.
shine a light on your career in the studio and what have you. So as we kind of close things out, and I'd like to kind of pitch it off to you to kind of close out the interview. If there's anything else you'd like to kind of squeeze in there, any closing remarks, then we'll wrap things up.
I don't really have a whole lot, no remarks. Just, man, come check out the studio. Come meet me. Come tour the place, man. You'll fall in love with it if you're in Tampa. You know, come check it out. It's an old historic spot. It's in a cool area of town, and I love making records. That's my main passion in life. So if you got a record you want to make, come check me out.